It's a first since 2002. Israeli tanks deployed in the occupied West Bank as part of an extensive military operation launched on January the 21st. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the operation, dubbed Iron Wall, aims to, quote, defeat terrorism. The fighting is taking a heavy toll on the local population. According to the UN, some 40,000 people from several refugee camps have fled their homes.
2 days after the Gaza ceasefire deal went into effect, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the right-wing Israeli government turned their focus and attention to the West Bank. And now, for the first time in decades, since 2002, tanks have been deployed to Jenin and other refugee camps to essentially drive Palestinians out. And I want to be clear, that is the whole objective here. They're not even trying to hide it. So Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said he and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the military to increase the intensity of the activity to thwart terrorism in all refugee camps in the West Bank. Now there has, to be fair, there's been an increase in Palestinian attacks coming from the West Bank. So for instance, on Thursday, 3 empty buses exploded in Israel in what police say was an attempted militant attack. However, let's also be clear in noting that since the war began in Gaza after October 7th, there has been a lot of violence toward Palestinian civilians by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. And so this has been going on, since the beginning of the war. More than 800 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since the war in Gaza erupted on October 7th. Israel says most were militants, but stone-throwing youths protesting Israeli raids, as well as bystanders, have also been killed, including, by the way, an American citizen that we reported on last year. In the most recent operation, a pregnant Palestinian woman was killed. Kind of hard to argue that she's a militant. Now, this weekend, the Israeli military also admitted its forces had killed 2 13-year-old kids and that it was investigating the incidents.
Sure, they'll get right on it.
Jenin's mayor says that Israel's military had also razed at least 120 residential buildings and caused hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Now, let's actually get to the veil being lifted. They're flat out telling the truth here. Now, Israel Katz is outright admitting that they intended to go beyond just killing people. They plan to ethnically cleanse the territory as well. He says, quote, "We will not allow the return of residents and we will not allow terrorism to return and grow." Earlier, Katz said he had instructed the military to prepare for an extended stay in some of the West Bank's urban refugee camps, from which about 40,000 Palestinians have fled, leaving them emptied of residents. And I just want to also note that he says that Israeli troops would stay for the coming year. In addition to that, Dropsite News is reporting that Israeli Deputy Knesset Speaker Nassim Vaturi, who's part of the Likud party, told radio station Kol Barama that all Palestinian men in Gaza should be wiped out. He says the following, and I'm quoting, "Who is innocent in Gaza? Civilians went out and slaughtered people in cold blood. We need to separate the children and women and kill the adults in Gaza. We are being too considerate." He also says we will soon turn to Jenin, or we will soon turn Jenin into Gaza. He said, adding that the Palestinian captives released under the Gaza ceasefire deal should be sent there so they can be eliminated by Israeli forces. Erase Jenin, don't start looking for the terrorists. If there's a terrorist in a house, take it out.
Yeah, because if you start looking for the terrorists, you run into Nissim Vaturi, who is clearly a terrorist. We're sending money to an Israeli government filled with terrorists. Ben Gvir is a terrorist. This guy's obviously is celebrating terrorism. He's saying we should murder the citizens. That is the definition of terrorism. And in Israel, that's not remarkable. The idea of killing innocent Palestinians seems to be widely accepted. No problem at all. There are tons of cabinet ministers constantly talking about killing them all, ethnically cleansing them, moving them out. driving them into the desert, etc. And they're still in government. We're sending money to a terrorist government. So look, let's talk about the different things that Israel has done to violate the ceasefire in Gaza, because that's the second part of the story. So they did not remove themselves from the Philadelphia corridor. That was one of the parts of the agreement. So they were supposed to, and when I saw that, I was like, really? They're gonna leave some of the land that they're occupying in Gaza? I'd be very surprised by that. Well, and of course, I was right. They're not gonna leave any of the land. The whole point is to steal land. It was never about self-defense. That's been a giant lie and a use of propaganda by Israel. Calling dead children collateral damage is propaganda by Israel. It's a vicious form of terrorism that Israel does, that they not only kill the children, but then they smear them later as like, oh, well, they were near terrorists, so they were collateral damage. I was moral in the way that I slaughtered them. No, you weren't. You were despicably immoral. So they did not leave the land, of course. Number two, they were supposed to negotiate the second part of the ceasefire and a permanent truce. Netanyahu did not send a single negotiator and had never had any intention of negotiating for a long-term peace. Exactly what we told you on the show, because he's not interested in peace. He's interested in war, colonial expansion, land acquisition, and land theft. And he's slaughtering more innocent Palestinians because he is one of the worst terrorists of our lifetimes. Okay, now number three, the prisoner swap. That's supposed to be the heart of the agreement here. The Hamas returns the hostages, and Israel's supposed to return what they call prisoners, but an overwhelming majority of them are just hostages because they do these giant roundups. They don't even charge them with any crimes. And then they go, if you want your hostages back, the ones that we humiliated and took away their freedom and destroy their lives.
Or raped in some cases.
And some of them raped. Well, then you're gonna have to give me some hostages back or whatever else that I want. I hate hostage taking on either side. It's super easy for me to condemn what Hamas has done. And let's talk about the Bibas family. So that's the two young kids who were killed by Hamas. They're returning the bodies. They're pretending to return the body of their mom. It turns out it's not their mom. So that's a violation of the ceasefire from Hamas's side. And the way that they paraded them around in front of the crowds, the coffins, was disgusting. By the way, the idiots in Hamas, every time I see what they do, I think, God, you are so monumentally stupid. So everything they do makes it harder to get a Palestinian state. So do you think the world is ready to have enormous sympathy for the Palestinians, and does? And these morons in Hamas come and ruin that sympathy by acting in the most barbaric and immoral way. So easy for me to condemn them. Now I'm gonna ask, for those of you who are Israeli supporters, do you do likewise for Israel? Do you condemn the 14,500 children that Israel has slaughtered? Or do you make nonsense excuses about, well, there's just collateral damage. They were just human shields. Hamas had it coming, the Palestinians had it coming. They agree with Hamas anyway. Well, you agree with your government. Does this justify slaughtering your children? No, it doesn't. And it doesn't justify slaughtering Palestinian children. 14,500 kids is not a mistake. That is done on purpose to terrorize the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank so that they'll leave their land and Israel can steal it, which is exactly what's happening now. Finally, if you say, well, I mean, Palestinian children, they really count? Because a lot of the Israeli propagandists, including in American media, will say, well, they all agreed with terrorism, they voted for terrorism, so what? Because Israeli children are the most God-given, beautiful creatures on earth. But by the way, they are, like all children, okay? But when it comes to Palestinian children, who cares? Slaughter, slaughter. Remember, bombs hit, concrete drops on a baby's head and crushes its skull. A bomb hits and lights the baby on fire. Israel has done that over 14,000 times. The worst kind of terrorism I've seen in my lifetime. And if you're still not convinced by that, 808 babies have been killed so far by Israel. Oh, collateral damage, right? So to me, those Israeli babies matter and the Palestinian babies matter. If the Palestinian babies don't matter to you, you lost your moral bearings at some point. So do not support the terrorist government of Israel. And every dollar that goes to them is America aiding and abetting that terrorism. I vote no on not a single more dollar to support killing babies.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.